I hope you guys don't think I'm weird. Well, I am weird, so get used to it. But I feel like Val Kilmer from Heat every time I hold this thing in my hands. It is just such a solid, awesome gun. You guys ever seen the movie Heat? Drive-in scene, Val Kilmer's hiding out. He's kind of scoping the guys out, see if they're going to kill whatever the other actor's name is. Anyway, he pops out with one of these and just bang, 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 bang. It was a fantastic scene. It's honestly the scene that made me fall in love with this gun here. And I am so happy that LCT has finally recreated this and about as close as you can get to the real thing without having a real thing. So, Airsoft. Welcome back, guys. I'm Prodigy Kilo 23. This is the LCT G3 SG1. I sold a couple of guns recently that I built, made a little money, and therefore I had some Airsoft spending money. Because my rule nowadays, being in college, is that if I have money, it doesn't go into Airsoft unless it's from Airsoft. So whatever's in Airsoft kind of stays there. Other money goes toward food, classes, rent, whatever else. This, I've kind of had my eye on for a while. LCT released these a while back. They were kind of hard to get in the US till Evike and a few other stores started carrying them. I got this off of Evike for about $285, used their President's Day 25% off coupon. And that was by far the best price I could find inside the US or outside of it. Outside of it, these go for over $400 pretty easily. Inside, usually about $380, give or take. I felt $285 was something I couldn't pass up. I've got a Classic Army model of these, and I'll tell you off the bat, just picking this up out of the box, this beats the Classic Army hands down. They have nothing on it whatsoever. It weighs a whopping 13 or 14 pounds. It is heavy. I saw my Evike order when they were shipping it to me. The UPS weight said like 14.5 pounds. I'm like, dang, I didn't realize it was that heavy. The whole thing is made of steel practically, of course, except the standard polymer components. You're talking your stock, your grip, your handguard, and that's it. Everything else is solid steel. It's fantastic. Unlike, I'll kind of talk about this sporadically a little bit. I'll cover the whole thing, then we'll get in more detail here in a minute. Unlike the other models like the Marui, the Classic Army, the G&G, this entire the receiver, the gas tube, it's all one piece. Obviously it's welded on, but it's all one chunk of steel. It's very heavy. It's moderately well balanced. I'm kind of surprised. It is a little front heavy, of course, because you got more weight up there and a plastic stock in the back, but it's more balanced than I thought it would be. So it's actually kind of nice. So before we get into this awesome piece of machinery, let's check out everything the gun comes with. First of all, it does come with a 140 round mid-capacity magazine. I haven't seen anywhere in the US start to carry these. They are a hair different than your standard Marui, Classic Army, JG magazine. I'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll probably actually make a video on how you can make those mags compatible with this and vice versa. But whenever I get around to that, we'll see. I do have some exams coming up, so yay. 140 round mid cap. You can buy high caps. They're fairly expensive. They're upwards of like the $27 to $30 mark overseas. I did the math, and if I got like say 3 mags, I'm paying like $120 with shipping, and it ends up being fairly expensive. So I'm hoping Evike or some US retailer starts to carry spare mags soon. Like I said, you can get your Marui compatible mags to work in this. It just requires some modification on either the mag or the gun's part. You get a little hook tool. I believe this is for like pulling your spring for the gas tube if you decide to disassemble the gun. Kind of cool of them to include this. Kind of a random little tool. It's almost like a coat hanger. You get this little tag here. It actually says LCT Airsoft. It's a little kind of almost large guitar picking looking item, and it's made of metal. So kind of cool tag. I kind of assumed this would be around the trigger guard, like say the Maruis had their little Marui hop-up tag around the trigger guard. But kind of neat, I guess. Comes with what I would call a fantastic manual for a gun. It's literally a breakdown of every component of the gun, including the gearbox. Hardly any company does that. It's such a nice touch to get a company that gives you a ton of detail on the gun without having to take it apart first. And lastly, you get this huge kind of catalog almost of everything that LCT currently sells. I tell you, I've got some, it's kind of about LCT here. I wish they made a retractable stock G3. The one thing I really wish they did was that, so I could get a retractable stock for this, because it's the one thing I can barely find anymore is those. Secondly, I would love to try out a M4 or M16 from LCT. They look awesome. I'm really curious about them. LCT, if you guys are listening, feel free to send me one. I'm happy to do a review for you guys because this G3 is hands down amazing. All right, with everything out of the way that it comes with, let's check out the gun itself. We're gonna start from the stock and move our way forward. Starting off from the stock, this thing is, all the plastic components are polymer. They're not ABS plastics or some cheap garbage like that. They're solid. I'm really impressed. I feel like they're pretty similar to what the real one is constructed out of, but don't hold me to that. On the Maruis or the classic armies or anything similar, you've always pushed down on this tab to access your battery compartment. This one you simply pull out. There's these two tabs. They lock into the little kind of pins, large pins that go through the stock in here. And normally your gun will come with a mini Tamiya. I've went ahead and installed a Dean's connector. All my batteries are Dean's, and it just seemed like the logical choice. Now these holes here, you can take the stock pins out and store them here. That's kind of what they're intended for. Easy storage, you don't lose them. The cheek rest here is actually rubberized. It's a big chunk of rubber. I really like that. The other brands I've seen, Classic Army, they're kind of like, they're kind of a flat rubber. This has kind of a texture to it, so it's a little bit different. I kind of like it a little bit better actually. All the plastic on here has like a slightly rough texture. This is really comfortable. Moving up the gun, receiver, whole thing is steel like I mentioned earlier. Your rear basket sight can be rotated. You've got a handful of different settings here. I usually leave it at the most open. I'll probably eventually put some kind of optic or scope on this, so I probably will not use these sights as much, but they are very usable. Even with goggles or glasses, whatever you use, the sights are pretty easy to line up, and you've got still enough room with the cheek rest here to do that. Your selector, you've got safe, semi, and full auto. This thing clicks into place reasonably well. You hear a decent click there, but this selector is about as stiff as one I've ever seen on an airsoft gun ever. I mean, some of these cheapo airsoft guns you get, they're kind of flimsy, they go back and forth. This thing, solid. It's never gonna fall out of safe unless you really want it to. Something a lot of you guys might ask about is whether the selector is ambi. Unfortunately, it is not, but I kind of like it that way because when I open the gun up, it's less for me to take apart and work on. So mine came stuck in the safe position pointed toward the top. Your magazine, just like any G3, AK, kind of this feel, FAL, you do have to rock it from the front inward to the back. Now, it's just like this with any Marui or anything, any other brand that makes this gun. You do have a push tab to release, or the release on the right side is actually pretty light considering it's not like some of the heavier springs I've used out there for some of the MP5s. So it's very easy to release it like that as well. To access the hop up, of course, you pull the charging handle all the way back and lock it upward. Very simple to do, and it is spring loaded. Big heavy bolt, so when you release it, it's kind of a nice clank. It's not super heavy. It's a lot of springy noise there, I've noticed. Being all steel, you can do the HK slap if you want. Just experience has taught me never to do that, no matter how solid your airsoft gun is. The real thing, fine, whatever, but any airsoft gun, I'll probably never do that, even on this thing. But I do trust it because just how solid this thing is. You pull this back, you can access your hop-up. It is a rotary style hop-up, and I've noticed it's actually an M4 style hop-up, believe it or not. Don't hold me to this. I believe you can put other M4 hop-ups in here as best I can tell, probably things like the Pro-Win, the SHS, anything along those lines, the Retro Arms. But I have not tested it. I will eventually to see if it'll fit other hop-ups, but I'm not 100% sure. Other than that, the hop-up's actually really difficult to adjust. When I took this out to Nighthawk Airsoft the other day to test, I had to actually take my car key and kind of twist it because my nails are really short now and I do not feel like ripping a nail out. So it's a really stiff hop-up. It's not going to turn up or down if you don't want it to. Now, the handguard on this gun is solid. No wiggle, no rock, no creak whatsoever. The only wiggle, rock, or creak you're going to get is on this bipod. And it is a little kind of loose here, I've noticed. I think partially that is because of a little bit of me messing it up a bit. I don't mind this, to be honest, because you can remove it, and I'll show you how to very easily in a second here. But you can pull these legs down. You're supposed to be able to push these little buttons here and bring the legs downward. But I ended up having to force mine a bit because they were so blasted stuck there when I got it. I couldn't get the left one down no matter what I did. If you really want to remove this, it's a very simple matter of putting a screwdriver in this little metal slot right here, prying it downward, and lifting scooting the bipod out. So it's very easy to remove. It just kind of sits in a little metal slot here. And so if you don't want it on there, it just takes a couple seconds to remove it. Now, what I did not mention earlier is you do have a sling loop in the stock here. It is part of the stock as far as being plastic. I'm not sure if I'd fully trust it as far as the weight of this gun because it is fairly heavy, but you do have a steel sling loop up front. This one I would definitely trust. You guys have probably noticed this thing has a black tip on it. It is a steel tip, and amazingly it did come with it. I didn't have to buy this aftermarket. I had emailed Evike asking them if it came with an orange tip or a black tip included as well. Unfortunately, they did not reply to me, so I just kind of took a chance and ordered it anyway without buying a spare. When I got it, this came attached, and it did not have an orange tip whatsoever, which was kind of surprising. But I'm fine with that, honestly, because I would have removed the orange tip and thrown it out anyway. What's cool about this, it's very easy to remove, and it stays on there no matter what. You remove this flash hider, and you've got 14mm negative threads on here. Very easy to access if you want to put a suppressor, a different muzzle device on there, anything like that. Now, finally, I'm really excited to do this. I haven't actually opened this up yet. We're going to put this down on my tech table, or essentially a desk. That's what I was provided with in this apartment. We're going to open this up and check out the internals and see how awesome this thing is. All right, with our gun disassembled, we can check out the internals. First, we're going to start with the hop-up barrel and all this good stuff here. This is really what's responsible for your gun's accuracy. It does come with a polymer hop-up chamber, and it is a rotary style hop-up. It is extremely stiff, and you've got a really audible response when you spin the wheel here. Now, something I did notice, I just tried this a second ago, I tried putting a regular M4 hop-up in the gun, and it unfortunately did not fit. I tried a rotary hop-up in an Elite Force one, and it almost fit. It just required a little bit of modification. So as best I can tell, you can probably get a rotary style hop-up to fit in the gun. This is actually LCT's M4 hop-up as best I can tell, and they just basically transplanted it into their G3. You'll also notice there's this big hefty spring on the front of it, so your entire hop-up stays really tight against your gearbox to give you a consistent air seal. There is not much crowning on the end of the barrel. It's got a little bit there, but no more than roughly 1 millimeter. In the pistol grip, you'll find metal inserts for the screw holes. Definitely a nice touch. I remember watching takedown videos on the LCT G3 before I bought one. I really wanted to see what the internals were like so I could kind of prepare for a video and what to expect as far as shooting quality and things like that. I remember watching a couple that said, and actually there are very few, like really one or two as far as what I could find, that said it came with a pretty standard motor, that it didn't really have a whole lot of torque and there wasn't really anything special about it. But this is actually a higher torque motor than I expected. It does have a decent amount of force when you're rotating the pinion, and it is labeled high torque, so I have to assume it's a torqueier motor than whatever they used to come with. So I'm guessing they started including a higher torque motor in these because this thing is shooting like 375 with 0.3s that I showed earlier in the video. And for a spring like that, I mean, this has got to be like a 130 or really good 120 seal spring. And it really needs a high torque motor to do that. So it's, I might not actually replace the motor like I had expected to. It does come with a D-type pinion. So it's kind of like your standard almost Chinese pinion. I feel like more of the Taiwanese guns like this one usually come with the O-hole pinions, but this one is a D-hole, which is a little out of character. All right, we've got our gearbox here. I'm going to go ahead and open this guy up. Last screw on the back here to take out. Try and retain the shimming here. It's actually a pretty decent looking gearbox. I like it so far. Generous grease. The gears are in the bushings pretty tight, or bearings I mean. Now, kind of got a little information before taking this guy apart. I kind of assumed LCT's shimming would be pretty good, and we'll check it here in a second, but I kind of just want to go through the gearbox here a little bit at a time. Steel gears, they look pretty decent. They remind me a little bit of VFC. You do have a metal sector chip here, nice touch. A little bit better feeding potentially at higher rates of fire. 9mm bearings, they look pretty strong. They do remind me of like the KWA bearings. I'm not too worried about those breaking. It is shooting pretty hot, so we'll see. Usually the larger the bearing, I find they tend to last quite a bit longer, but that varies, of course. One nice thing is your trigger is made of steel. That's a big plus. And I'm looking at the trigger contacts. They look pretty decent. I think they'll last a while, but I'm still not going to run an 11.1 volt on these. Definitely not. A lot of grease in the right spots. Just kind of checking the height to make sure the gear clears the bushings. It's right on the edge there as far as height-wise clearing the tops of those bushings. And the shimming height is okay. I'm just looking at it from the side here as far as how it contacts the sector gear there. And let me put this back together and check it out that way too. Yeah. They spin well. Might have to adjust the height on the sector a little bit, and they sound pretty decent spinning. So the shimming is surprisingly good. Might have to make minor adjustments, but for something that's stock out of the box, I'm actually quite impressed with the shimming, so that's a plus. How's the air seal? Air seal's really good. Getting that bounce back there, that's definitely a plus. Go ahead and kind of disassemble this and look at everything. Got your aluminum piston head here. It does have bearings in there. It's pretty front heavy, so it's got some weight to it. It is ported. It's got 6 ports on the front there. And it is a metal tooth rack. Second to last tooth is not removed. So if you guys want to correct your angle of engagement, I highly recommend doing that. And good grease on the piston. It's got a Type 0 cylinder with the ribbing. A little bit of a concave to the cylinder head. It's a really light cylinder head, even though it's aluminum, so it's kind of nice. Double O-ring. Pretty good air seal. Aluminum cylinder, of course, there. Kind of wiggles out of there. I might put some Teflon tape around that to get a slightly better seal, even though the seal seems to be pretty good. O-ring nozzle, looks like it's about an M4 length, because it does have roughly an M4 hop-up, so that's not surprising. Tappet plate is really flexible, so that's a plus. We've got all the air components out of the way. Let's check out the spring guide. It kind of feels like somewhere between a 120 and a 130. It's not like a super, usually you expect a 130 to be fairly stiff. I use a lot of 120s and 110s. It feels more like a new 120. So I'm surprised it's shooting as hot as it is, about 450 with 2s, give or take. Now, the gearbox, you guys might recognize, is pretty much from their M4s. As far as I can tell, it's just one of their blowback gearboxes. It doesn't have the bar here. You can see the little inserts for the little bar for the M4 and the blowback system. Being an mechanical blowback that is picked up by the piston and essentially moves the fake bolt back and forth on the M4. It does not do that on this G3. Otherwise, I would have disabled it by now. It's a pretty heavy bolt on the G3, so it's probably a bad idea in general. The gearbox shell itself is not radius, so I'm definitely going to end up having to radius it. But it's a fairly, it almost feels like a zinc material. It's really similar to like how the G&G gearboxes feel, or how the ZCI gearboxes feel. Kind of a similar feel to that. So overall, a pretty decent gearbox. Definitely really helps out having all these metal, decent quality components for the high price tag of this gun. So we're back here. After having opened this up, I'm really pretty impressed with the gun. I did take it out the other day to After having opened this thing, I'm really impressed with it. It is pretty pricey. It's like your $400 G3. It's expensive. If you use a coupon code right now, I notice Evike does not have this map price protected, so you can get it 20–25% off, whatever the coupon code is, and get it for under $300, which is a pretty dang good deal. I'll tell you, when I took this out to Nighthawk Airsoft and tested it, I knew it was kind of shooting pretty hot. I expected it to be kind of DMR FPS wise, but I wasn't really prepared for how much range it had stock. I put, I believe it was 2.8s in this from Elite Force, just some regular Bio 2.8s from them. And I was easily getting 200 feet. Now, to a man-sized target, I wasn't, you know, shooting paper plates or anything. I could hit a person at 200 feet without a problem. I bet you if I put 3s or 3.2s in this, I could probably push 220 plus feet, no problem. I was standing at their entrance. I was hitting a tree line a serious distance away, and this was with a hop up moderately adjusted. It was probably dropping a little earlier than it could have, because honestly, that wheel is a kind of a pain to adjust. Once you have it, I highly recommend just leaving it, because you're not going to want to adjust it with your thumbnail or something like that. It's really stiff and you're going to bend your nail back painfully. But I was really impressed. Things I would do to this gun. I would probably throw a MOSFET in it, whether you guys want a Gate Titan, a basic MOSFET, a Hulk FET, if you can find one anymore. Come on, Hunter, you need to make some more Hulk FETs, dude. I'd probably do that. I'd probably put a screw in the back of the spring guide so that the spring guide kind of, you know, it's fixed in place, because most other, if not all other airsoft guns of this type have something screwed into the back of the gearbox into the spring guide. Not sure why they didn't do that with this. Who knows? Other than that, I might put a flat hop or something in it. The accuracy was really good from what I saw. I think that's probably about it. Oh, I'd put a torque motor in it. Seeing that it has a basic motor and it's pulling a pretty heavy spring, you might want something a little more out of it. I did notice that before I wired this gun to Dean's, it was really slow response, considering, because I had a Dean's to Tamiya or whatever adapter, and that was on a 7.4 stick, and given there wasn't a lot of power being pumped into it, but once I disconnected it right to Dean's, even with the same battery, the trigger response, rate of fire was significantly faster. So you can tell this kind of standard motor is really drawing a lot of power from whatever battery you're going to use. So I don't really recommend using an 11.1 on this as it is. A good 7.4 will get you 15 rounds a second, which is plenty. Stock out of the box, unopened. But if you guys really wanted to run an 11.1, highly recommend throwing a MOSFET in here. Otherwise, just use a 7.4. But my guess is most fields are going to double check the chrono on this, shooting as odd as it does. So my thoughts on this, I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. Some small things I would change, but overall, it is a solid gun. I'm impressed with it. I think it's a fantastic buy. If you guys are wanting a G3, this is the only one I would highly recommend. Most other G3s in the market, if you can find one like the classic armies, I haven't been impressed with. You know, the old ones I like a lot more. The new ones I haven't been as impressed with from the things I'm hearing. This thing outshines all of them. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Prodigy from Kilo 23, and I will be back as soon as I possibly can with another video. Take care, guys.